Hey guys, Novus here, and welcome back to From the Depths. So, got a couple of different turrets here. Been meaning to go over them and sort of show how they've each been made and so forth, so might go over them quickly here. Yeah, got them all set up and ready to go. This one is the current one we're using on the battleships. This is the new AA gun, and fairly simply set up. So I'll just open it up so that way you can easily see what's going on with it. Actually, I should have extended it up. I should have had it off the ground, that way you could see under it a bit better as well. Oh, okay, it's all good. So basically what I've done, and also I did notice somebody mentioned about the fact that I was making the turret diamond shaped before. Yeah, usually when I'm sort of setting up a gun for the first time and I'm getting an idea of sort of the number of parts I want on it, especially with that one because I was just sort of making it bigger and bigger and bigger, the shape kind of just changes. It's usually just sort of quickly slapping it together there on the go, just so I can have an idea of how many parts I want in the gun, and then when I'm making the actual gun I'll usually sort of try and decide on a shape and height for the gun to be able to actually fit that many parts in and so forth. So yeah, it's the only reason it was shaped the way that it was at the time. So what we've got going on is we've got more than one there we go, set of gauge increases leading up. The rest is all just packed in. As you can see, we've got the ammo intake at the bottom, ammo intake at the top. I believe I was actually meant to put the belt fed autoloaders there and the ammo clips there. I've kind of ended up doing it backwards. So it's actually my bad. But it's not going to have a huge difference. The idea is just to try and space it away from the bottom of the hull and the top of the hull, so that way any shots hitting around there don't have a chance of detonating the shells within. Yeah, we've got the cooling vents leading up here, branching off from the gauge increase there. On the inside, only on two sides, we've also got the cooling vents going up, and that's because here is where it's actually branching off from the center. So what I'll do is I'll kind of cut the gun in half. So yeah, just got a couple of recoil absorbers slapped in down here as well, and where I can kind of fit them, just a couple extra cooling vents. So the whole thing's hooked up to just one gun though, rather than having sort of 4 separate firing pieces or anything like that. It's just got the one, and because of that it allows you to go with, I guess, a bit more of a messy setup if you want to. So snaking these things around down here and so forth, and just slapping in extra cooling vents here and there, a gauge increaser where you need it, so on and so forth. Reason being, yeah, because it's all just hooked up to the one single firing piece, it's not going to end up meaning a difference between each of the firing pieces. So usually if you had 4 firing pieces up there or 2 firing pieces, you'd want to try and make sure that, say, anything that was branching down the left side, so you'd have a beam in the center there, and then you'd end up sort of branching these down on either side. You want to make sure that they're perfectly identical on each side, so that way they both have the same number of cooling vents and gauge increases and so forth. As you don't want to end up with like your guns firing completely out of timing with each other, preferably. Yeah, so just finish cutting the side up here. So this should reveal quickly how I've sort of just kind of snaked the cooldowns around and so forth. Now this is a scaled down version, so I've got another version sitting to the side. I'll show you in a sec. But yeah, so what happens is it just runs straight down, splits off left and right here. Underneath that is where you've of course got your spin block. Then you've got gauge increases on either side, allow it to branch up and down, From there I branched it straight off and across. It's a bit confusing. Yeah, so I branched it left and right from each of those, and then basically what happens is they sort of find a way to, like, each of these branch offs will reach off into the other side that isn't covered. So this one will reach off to this side, and this one will reach off to this side. And so that way we've got sort of our 4 edges where we can actually chain it back up on all 4 sides. It just sort of like allows for the extra cooling squished into a very small design. And yeah, should be fairly straightforward. The ammo intakes, I'd have to show you the shells on the actual ship itself. I'll bring that in a minute anyway. So yeah, that's this gun. Now moving on to, there we go. Moving on to, this is the previous version that I was using. So it's very much the same dimensions and like a very similar build. It's just that this one was much more heavily armored, I guess, and didn't have anywhere near the cooldown rate. So you can see there's many layers of armor here. So what's happened is there's one set. Yeah, this one was mostly armor. And this is one of the earlier guns I built. I just kind of slapped it together at the time to be able to slap it into the battleship. And the primary thing I was worried about at the time was having them like fairly weak, but able to take some punishment. Not too much chance of them just detonating on me. So yeah, let's go. There's 3 loaders on each side there. It's kind of got a little branch off where it was reaching back up, but I kind of stopped it early, right alongside the the auto loaders, the ammo clips, and the intakes. And we just had 6 of them running it, and that's all that was running this gun, and it ran fine. Yeah, but just 70 mil, fairly easily, quickly set up, nothing special about it. So moving on, we've got over here, this is the slightly more upscaled version of the shotgun turret that we have on the actual battleship that I was showing you a second ago, like the first one I showed. So yeah, with the, whoops, that just deleted, yeah, put it there. Yeah, so this one's it's basically the same thing, it's pretty much the same dealio. It's just that, I can open it up a bit more. Yeah, kind of just had a lot more space to fit more auto loaders in. It's pretty much the only difference. Still had a decent shape to it, so it could rotate in like a fairly decent little area. But yeah, it turned out it was 1 block too wide. I'd actually somehow gotten it wrong when I actually went to work on the gun. I miscounted the number of blocks out I needed to branch the gun out to. So this is what ended up turning up, and then yeah, worked on it since then. This one shoots a bit better than the ones that we've actually got on the battleship at the moment, but yeah, it's fine. We've got enough firepower. But yeah, see, this one just kind of shot a little bit more, and it tended to get the bullets out a little bit quicker. But it should be fine. So that's this version. Now moving on to the quad cannon. So I showed you guys the bottom half of this last time. It's 2 layers, so I mean it could be cut down an entire layer and be 1 block smaller the entire way around as well. But yeah, I didn't show you guys the top, so I'll go over the top really quickly. So it's also double layered from what I remember, but not the entire way around. So where the detection is at the top here, it's just that. Then we've got the single layer of armor under it, except where we've got the receiver where there's no armor. So I guess, you know, that could be a weak point if it's hit directly from above, but for the most part, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Not from what I've found. So we'll just open this box right up. We can have a quick ease. How sort of... There we go, managed to jigsaw this together. So it can be a bit of a pain, in all honesty. Trying to get a quad cannon up and running for anything really can be a little bit... How's it going? Sometimes it's like it goes really straightforward and it's really easy to set a gun up. Other times it's like, hey, yeah, this is going to be a massive pain. This one wasn't too bad. So what I've got going on is, yeah, so the leftmost one just branches straight up into the gun. It is a pity we don't have corner pieces for the gauge increases. Really wish we did. It would just make things look so much neater and so forth here, but oh well. That's basically all that's really needed here is just corners. So you want to chuck a corner off that way, up and straight forward. Then we've got the rearmost gun, branches straight up, cuts off to the right, and it'll be your rightmost gun. It just branches straight forward and straight into the gun. Now the other ones, so your rightmost gun will just branch straight forward and immediately into a firing piece. And there's your two guns on this side. I always leave a gap in the center, otherwise it's going to be an absolute pain trying to line these things up without getting them to connect to each other and so on and so forth. Because they will steal each other's parts if there's a connection made between the two of them. And then the very forwardmost gun just reaches off to the right. So let me figure out, hang on. There it is. So the forwardmost gun here just branches. Whoa. Okay, hang on. Might need to cut out the mantlets because they're just making it very difficult to see. Okay. That's good. So yeah. What happens with the center gun is it branches up. It should split off to this one somehow, I believe. Hang on. Yeah. So that one branches off here and it becomes the inner left gun. So it branches off this way, then that way, then straight around to the gun. So yeah, it can be a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle sometimes, getting them to line up exactly the way you want them to, but once you got it, it should be fine. So yeah, that's the top of this gun. It should give you an idea as to how you can set up some quad guns with the advanced firing pieces and so forth. Okay, so now we've got the main cannon for the destroyer. This is something I don't think I'd shown off yet. So basically what we've got another quad gun set. So you want your main beam of armor running up the center, and your connectors on all four sides. The cram connectors is sort of how I originally learned how to set these firing pieces up and so forth. But they can be a little more difficult. The reason being is, unlike with the advanced cannons, where you're working with pieces that you can very specifically direct in terms of where it's going to branch off to and so forth, it does still have the T piece, so it's a bit how's it going, you don't have a corner, so because it operates like a T, like if you're trying to branch off from there and go off to the right, it would also branch off to the left technically, so if you had anything there to try and connect up to that. These, on the other hand, will try to connect to everything around them. So you got to be a little bit more careful, I guess, with your placement of everything. So we've actually got our fusing boxes up the top here. I believe they're thrown in later, from memory. But yeah, so what's going down is essentially we've got the 4 beams coming up again. This one immediately just jumps into the secondary gun here. Now the way we've had to set this up, as you can see, is they actually are different lengths. It may not have been too apparent originally. You'll probably notice it a lot more now that you're aware, but when I was using this gun before, the barrels were actually completely different lengths, and as such you can see they positioned themselves differently. I wish there was a better way of setting this up. I haven't looked over it for a while, so I don't know. Maybe there's some weird wizardry I could pull off, but as far as I'm aware, this was pretty much the only way I could find of really setting a quad gun up in the cram cannon version, just due to the fact that they do try to connect on all sides. So you have to make sure that you've got an armor gap between all of your different branching sort of connectors off to their firing pieces. But yeah, so if you're having trouble with them, don't be afraid to set up like a, like a bit of a longer area for the turret to sit in. The top of the turret to sit in for your firing pieces and your connections and all the rest of it. And just sort of extend some of the guns to be slightly longer than the others. It will give you the space that you need to be able to actually connect it up. And they still operate fine. These were the same guns that I was using to get through all of the deep water guards, forces and so forth, and yeah, they're highly accurate, despite that. Then down here, sorry guys, my throat is really messing up with me today. Yeah, here we are. Rip all this off. So yeah, pretty straightforward, simple setup. But our gauge increases run all the way around the bottom. Now I make sure that there's an air gap. So you can see the air gap here. Air gap here, which ended up getting filled with armor. These could technically branch out one more as well, and then have an armor piece in between them. And these could technically branch out to here, I believe. And there. And then, yeah, we'd have to have an air gap there. It's basically just making sure that the gauge increases don't connect up to, like, between two guns and try and start stealing parts off of one another. Yeah. So it's very simple setting the cram cannons up down the bottom. It's not really an issue. The main thing I wanted to show was the top of the gun, because I know it really can be a pain to try and figure out how to sort of set up many guns from a cram setup into a single turret. But yeah, so this is what we're rolling around with the destroyer. So the new battleship here. These forces. There we go. I'm having a bit of an issue, to be honest, with this being a little too. Happen again. I'm having a bit of an issue with this kind of being a bit too big now, where it's kind of it's becoming difficult to even load the ship up and run it in degraded mode and so forth. So I don't know. I'd end up having to set up some smaller units to sort of roll around and do their thing. Alright, here we go. Use these two guns. Now, the reason there's a bunch of extra guns in group 3 at the moment, I'm going to be changing them over to different groups. Slapped a couple of these in. Now, the reason for them is simply if something gets directly above us now. So sometimes things will get like a single thruster broken on it, and it'll have a thruster on its right and on its left. And it'll begin spinning around in circles. When that happens, it's basically going to spin directly above us. And so the AA guns can't point literally like straight up. They can point pretty high up. It's going to be hard to actually even... Right, here we go. Yeah. So, I mean, they can point almost directly up, but not quite. And so a lot of vehicles can end up in just a really annoying position where they can't shoot it. So, yeah, if anything gets crippled like that and just starts circling us, they're usually not really any threat to us anymore, but we just need to get rid of them. Yeah, we've now got 6 more machine guns that can spray up. And, yeah, should hopefully keep us a little more covered. It costs nothing to set up, so yeah, Alright, yeah, back to these. So, yeah, they don't fire as much as I prefer. So you can see. Sorry. On the upside, because we've got so many on each side, I mean, we are still dishing out the kind of firepower I wanted. So yeah, while their fire rate is very, very low, like the number of shots, correction, is very, very low for this type of gun, and it's not necessarily shotgunning the shots out quite like the original gun was. I mean, it's kind of more of a stream over about a second of shots. They are still putting out an alright number of shots per round for the sides, so real quick. Yeah, it's about 40-ish shots per memory. Nothing compared to the old gun that was shooting out like 180 or whatever, but that means 40, 80, 120, 160. So we're still putting out 160 rounds off the side of the ship at a time, plus the big guns. So yeah, hoping that'll work out. As you can see, I've also put a little bit more paint on the ship now. Just try and make it look a little bit nicer. Still needs a bit more shape to it inside as well. Still looks a little plain and so forth. And needs a bunch of parts throwing into it here and there just to sort of make it, like just for decorations purposes, I guess. Sort of a dealio, just to make it look a bit better. But I've kind of held off on that for now, as it is, yeah, at the point where the second it gets into a fight with other forces, it hits degraded mode. And yeah, kind of want to try and keep that from happening too much. So yeah, that's a quick look over our turrets. See, we got the 5 different turrets there we've had a look over now. And yeah, hope you all have a pretty solid idea of how to set similar setups and hopefully better setups and so forth up. If you do come up with anything cool, let me know. I'm interested to hear about it. And yeah, hopefully that gives you some ideas. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and have a good one, guys.